All right, so let's actually get into making some 3D models in Autodesk Maya. I'm using the 2018 version of Maya, but really since 2016, all the versions have been pretty much the same. So even if you're on 2019, it should look almost exactly the same. So I've booted Maya up, and since you're probably starting Maya for the first time, you might have to log into your Autodesk account. Again, all of that is free because you're a student. And you probably have several pop-ups that are like tutorials and things like that. Just go ahead and close out of all of those, and we're just going to have the default Maya interface open. On the far right-hand side of the screen, I want you to click Workspace, and just make sure that you're on Maya Classic. And if it looks drastically different than mine, go on down to Reset Current Workspace, and that should make it look just like mine. Maya can be an extremely overwhelming piece of software. There are a lot of different functions within Maya that you may not use ever in your time with Maya, or you may use them every time that you open up the program. So let's just get a little bit acquainted with the interface, and let's remove some of the extraneous details, the distractions that we have. So the first thing is, just to introduce all of this in the interface, I want to go ahead and remove a lot of these bars at the bottom, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. These are used in animation, and we're not going to be covering animation within Maya in this class. That's a more complex topic that would be better suited for a future course. So I'm going to just disable this timeline down here, and the best way to do that is to go up to the Windows screen, and then UI elements, where I can check and uncheck different things. So we're going to uncheck the time slider. I'm going to go back up into that, and now I'll uncheck the range slider, which is the now new bottom of the screen. This down here is the MEL interface. This is used for doing essentially programming within Maya. Again, a much more advanced topic, so we're just going to turn that off, which is going to be the command line. And then lastly, and this is an optional option, there's a help bar down here that shows you basically which tool you have highlighted. See, as I highlight different tools, this text down here changes. It's up to you if you want to have that on or off. Personally, I don't find it to be particularly useful, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. That's the help line within that UI elements. So we've given ourselves a little bit more screen real estate, and this can really help us have a better look at our 3D model that we're going to be creating. So on the far left-hand side, we have the toolbar where we have some different tools we can select, and then we have our different views right here. So cycling through these are different view layouts. We'll get into those a little bit more in a future video, and these are our tools, things like move, rotate, scale. Then we have at the very top of our screen the menu bar. Below that, we have what's called the status line, which we'll use a little bit in this class. Make sure that that says modeling. That's the most important thing now. And then we have the tool shelf, and this is where most of our functions exist. Notice that the tool shelf has all these different tabs for different sets of tools. We're going to be mostly sticking to poly modeling and sculpting in this class. Down here we have the viewport, and the viewport is where we can actually view and rotate and make modifications to our model. Now, you may not have this little text over here on the side. You can turn that on and off by going up to display, heads up display, and the poly count. I like to have that on because I use that a little bit later, but you don't necessarily need it for this course. So within the viewport, we have our own set of menus, different ways of viewing our models. And then we have a bunch of different camera options, and a lot of these icons are just different types of views you can have. So I can view a model with textures, without textures, with certain types of lighting, and so on. Over here we have an exposure shifter. This can change the display brightness, which can help us out. And finally, over here on the far right-hand side, we have a kind of dynamic panel that'll be changing a lot as we work. These are context-sensitive panels that shift depending on what we have selected and which panels we have open. On the right-hand side, you can turn these panels on and off using these different buttons. So this is the channel box and layer editor, which is what's currently open. So layers are down here and channels are right here. And we'll get into what all these things are a little bit later. We have the modeling toolkit button right here. We can also select it right here. And within the modeling toolkit, this is what we're going to use to actually modify our models around. And then lastly, we have the attribute editor. And the attribute editor is kind of like the channel box. We'll use that to modify our models. So these can all be collapsed just by clicking the same one again. So if I have the channel box selected and I click it again, it'll collapse it. Same with like if I had the modeling toolkit selected and I click it again, it'll collapse it and give us a little bit more screen real estate. Especially if you don't have a big monitor, it's important to have a lot of screen real estate you can work with in this class.